I will defeat the Powerpuff Girls, or my name isn't Mojo Projo.
Anzrag the Quake Mole versus Stitcher Geralf, Mayael, and Braids. Plenty of mana and a means of refilling our hands, so we're keeping that one. And before the game starts, I've pointed it out before, I don't think the Surveil lands are getting the respect they deserve. Now you can riddle me this. Why does everyone have a hard-on for the Scry lands, but they don't like the fetchable Surveil lands? Never liked the Scry lands personally, but the fact that they are fetchable and that you can still remove something from at the top of the library is good. Obviously it's good for graveyard decks and stuff as well. Getting to another land, the blue player has got a training grounds down, so this will only cost 1 mana to activate. Go for the commercial district straight away. Speaking of which, it's good for a turn 1 play. And Soul's Majesty, it's probably wise to keep hold of just in case someone counters a Wheel of Fortune. Yeah, we'll keep it on top. Cult Conscript from the black player. And Mayael goes for a turn 1 Sol Ring into a Talisman, so accelerating way ahead on mana. And a tap land here, Rivendell, comes in tapped thanks to not controlling a legendary. So we know what we're drawing into in the Soul's Majesty. Let's get down a mountain and go for another tap land with the Nature's Law. No, we don't have the Shock land in this deck actually. That's an oversight. Oh well, Cinderglade it is. Blood Artist for the player that wants a lot of sack fodder in play. And a 2-1 going in at Mayael, who's accelerating ahead on mana like we said. So now seeing a Mayael on turn 1, not making use of the Sol Ring yet. So as long as this player drops a land next turn, he will be able to activate the commander. The blue player goes for some slow ramp with the Burnished Heart. Okay, there is a Kedis for us, so we could maybe go for a double spell on Combat Celebrant and Kedis next turn. Maybe won't need the Wheel of Fortune after all. Let's go for our commander Anzrag here. Don't have any lure effects yet that will get our opponents to be forced to block, but we can just be dealing a bunch of commander damage in the meantime, or getting them to chump block, whatever. I think they can do this at instant speed, can't they? Yes, so we'll have to be careful going in over here. Braids hit in place, so we've got all but one of the commanders on the board. And I don't imagine the blue player will be playing many board wipes. See if the conscript is sacrificed to the Braids. It is, so Blood Artist is going to trigger. We will not be sacrificing our commander. Okay, surprisingly the Mayael does decide to sacrifice. Yeah, not sure why they've done that. Fine with me though. Hopefully we don't see a shame scoop here. So the Blood Artist is spread about between myself and the blue player. Maybe going to see a Blasphemous Act here or something like that. They did have a land, so they could have activated their commander here. Into a Felwar Stone. So we'll assume they drew that this turn because they didn't play it off the Sol Ring previously. And then Cathartic Pyre does Lightning Bolt the Braids out of the way, so that's good. And Blood Artist is pointed at the Naya player. So we've already, by turn 3, got a couple of players down to 3 cards in hand, so the Wheel of Fortune looking worse and worse. I'm glad I decided to keep the Soul's Majesty. Burnished Heart being sacked straight away. Not worthy that it is much faster than it would have been thanks to the training grounds, only going to cost 1 mana to sacrifice this, so they don't have to tap out. Alright, so that's our first piece of lure tech. Target creature must be blocked this turn if able, so we can get rid of the Blood Artist. And that will cantrip as well, so let's get a basic out just in case there's like a contamination or a blood moon or something. Got plenty of jewels at the moment. Or are we best saving this until we can make multiple combats? We'll want our commander to be indestructible, I suppose, because it means that we're not getting down both our creatures this turn if we go for the Irresistible Prey. And we could maybe go Soul's Majesty and the Irresistible Prey next turn if we need to. Yeah, let's go after Kedis at least. See if the blue player's holding up priority. Doesn't look like he is. And Blood Artist not too much of a threat while there aren't too many creatures in place, so yeah, let's go straight down the middle. And we'll deal 8 commander damage here, and then the Kedis will have the other 2 players have 8 damage dealt to them. So that does go on the stack as a trigger. And yeah, we deal a total of 24 damage there. So let's just end the turn off with the Combat Celebrant. A Grim Haruspex means that they still can't gang up on the mole. So we could go Irresistible Prey onto this. Swing in, they block with at least 1 creature. Preferably we'd have Trample, but obviously we haven't drawn into that yet. Point being, we can get multiple combats if we like next turn. assuming that the board stays as it is. Thor Mammoth into play, yeah, you had to assume that we were going to lose our commander, assuming that that's what it goes after. No, going after the Combat Celebrant. Now this is whenever another creature enters under your control, so they'll have to play another creature in order to make this relevant, but yeah, we do get to keep our commander at least. So I'm glad I played the Combat Celebrant now, even if it was just fodder for the Thor Mammoth to eat. Stitcher Geralf into play for the first time. Okay, there's an old Gnawbone, which will be nice once we get haste into play. I don't imagine it will survive very long, although this triggers on any creature, doesn't it? Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player. So maybe during the next turn or two we can be doing that. Play a land, play the Irresistible Prey on our commander. Black player holding up priority, so may have a Tragic Slip or something like that. Defile is the one that cares about the number of swamps, could go after the Anzrag with that. We get into that Tiger, so I think we just have to go after that Soul's Majesty now then. Might as well draw the cards now while we're doing nothing else. And again, priority being held over here. So draw into a whole bunch, including a rock and a Vorak Battlehorn, so the equipped creature has trample and can't be blocked by more than one creature, which will help us later. Can't equip it now, but I don't think it's of any relevance. Did get into more card draw in the form of Rishkar's Expertise as well, so we'll go through to combat. And do we want rid of Grim Haruspex or the Stitcher Geralf? I think I'll go after the blue player here. And obviously if we had Indestructible on our commander, we could just keep attacking in like crazy, forcing everyone to block with all their creatures. Eventually they would all go down, and then we could just hit someone and deal more damage with Kedis. They do have to block with their commander here. So because it's blocked, the Anzrag goes on the stack, untaps, and we will get another combat phase here. So Blood Artist triggers, and that is pointed at us. Now there's an argument to be made that we could go in at the Thor Mammoth here, force it to block because we're better having it off the field and it's going to go after the Anzrag anyway, but maybe they'll leave us alone like they did previously. So let's just go in at the blue player here so that we can force the issue and deal some commander damage to the blue player as well as 8 damage to the others as well. Again, the black player holding up priority. So we do manage to hit. Kedis goes on the stack and deals that damage. And whilst I've been waiting there, we've got our 7 cards selected out that we are not going to discard to hand size. So go through to the main, play the Mana Crypt, showing our hand a little bit by getting down the Vorak. I don't like to get down equipment without equipping them straight away, but we'll get ahead a little bit on mana here. And this means that we only have to discard a couple of lands. Defiler of Flesh is going to make it so that the black permanents are going to cost less. Makes it more difficult to swing in over here as well, of course. Might be that we can get into Hammer of Nazam with Rishkar's Expertise and play it for free with this as well, and it'll equip itself for free, so that could help with our commander in play. Obviously depends what we draw into. A Blood Fountain being played by the black player as well, and that comes down with a blood token. The Blood Artist, now a 1-2 with Menace, comes in to hit us, and that got +1/+1 and Menace from the Defiler of Flesh, by the way. So we'll see if a creature comes down here and takes out our commander. That is a Morog, Fury of Akorn. We have that in this deck as well. And okay, goes after the Kedis. So might have another creature, 2 cards in hand, but leaving the commander in play again. Blood Artist pointed at us, so he's maybe thinking he can use us to help take out the other 2 players, and then we go head to head. And then a land with Morog being played during the main phase, so the additional combat phase doesn't do anything here. Or I should say, he'll get the additional combat phase, but the untap trigger goes now. So he's already had the untap trigger here, so could have gone swing in with Thor Mammoth, then play a land with the Akorn, and swing in with this again, assuming that he wants to hit us. Yep, comes in for 7. Myriad Landscape being sacrificed for a bit of ramp from the blue player now. Alright, we go down to 22, losing the flip to Mana Crypt. Okay, and there is a Lightning Greaves for us, so are we going to land a Lightning Greaves? We can go Tiger, Lightning Greaves, and Old Gnawbone. Let's see how likely we are to land Lightning Greaves. I want to see if the blue player holds up priority. Black player still holding up priority, as is Mayael, only 1 card in hand there. Doesn't mean it's an irrelevant card though. Alright, that lands straight through the blue player, so we'll assume we can get down Old Gnawbone. We'll need to get down another creature now because the Vorak Battlehorns won't be able to target a single creature with Shroud. Mayael, again, holding up priority there, but deciding to allow it, so we'll go for Old Gnawbone here. And do we swing in with everything, hoping that we're going to make a bunch of treasures? Try and get haste onto Gnawbone. Okay, that lands. I think we're going to be fine during combat here. Can we get creatures into block with is the question. Let's swing in at the Mayael. And that can go in, hopefully, at the blue player unimpeded. We should land at least 7 damage with Old Gnawbone though, so should be able to replay our commander if we need to. Being very aggressive here, but it is a Gruul aggro extra combats deck. Might even draw into an extra combat card here. Blocks are declared, so we're landing, 15 points of damage. So Old Gnawbone triggers for both creatures. And I think we'll go Lightning Greaves onto the commander. And then it's Rishkar's Expertise, see what we draw into. We have 9 mana left, and we can get a free spell off with the Rishkar's Expertise as well. Yeah, we've got forcing our opponent to block. We can give Indestructible with the Anara. I think I maybe want to draw more with the Harmonise here, to be honest. So we'll just do that for free. Draws us even more. There is a couple of means of haste in Rhythm of the Wild and the Rising Day. So we'll definitely get down a Sol Ring. Need to try our best to survive a turn here. So we'll get down Rhythm of the Wild, because that will come in handy for next turn potentially, but also we can have Anara come in with a plus counter, just in case that's of any relevance. Yeah, so we'll do that now. So that enters with a plus counter. We've got 3 mana left. We could go for Rising of the Day, so that this then has an additional +1 to its power. Or we could just put a plus counter on it with this, and then that would give it Indestructible as well, and that way we can hold up Nature's Claim. So yeah, I think we'll do that. Pass the turn over. Can't give it Shroud if we're going to be targeting it with Gaia's Gift. We can always point this at something of ours and gain 4 life as well if we're desperate to, but hopefully won't come to that. Braids a Risen Nightmare into play again. And Defiler of Flesh giving itself +1/+1 and Menace. It already has Menace, so just going to deal 5 damage to us most likely. And then it's an Elvish Doomsayer. When it dies, each opponent discards a card. That's probably alright. And yep, it is actually 6 damage coming in towards us now, thanks to the elf. And then Braids likely going to sacrifice, yep, the elf at the end of the turn, so we each have to discard a card. Not going to sacrifice with the Braids. The Morog did get sacrificed to that though. Obviously is quite a low life total here. Blood Artist is being pointed at us. If we can get another turn, I'd be very happy with that, but I'm not confident we're going to. Grim Haruspex will draw a card as well. Yeah, so I'm going to assume that Rising of the Day is going to be irrelevant here. Would be nice to put Trample on our commander with Gaia's Gift. We should be able to get it next turn with Roar of Challenge as well, assuming that we can get enough extra combats in. I don't think Wheel of Fortune is going to be relevant either, but I'm going to risk Rising of the Day. Got a few means of haste on the board. Alright, 1 card in hand for the Naya player. You assume that this Thor Mammoth is going to come in towards us, and it does. So this is what we were planning on. So we could go for the Gaia's Gift, although we've got Trample on the equipment, haven't we? So yeah, I think we can use Gaia's Gift on Anara, like we said we were going to. And this will buff it up enough to survive against the Thor Mammoth. It will gain Indestructible and it will be able to take out the Thor Mammoth. Obviously, Anara gives our commander Indestructible during our turn as well. So block the elephant and take it out. Creature goes down. The Blood Artist triggers again and gets pointed at us again. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for our opponent to play out the Mayael here, because it means that they... Okay, or they could just scoop. Yeah, they play the Mayael there, and then that's just one more blocker to go in the way of our Mole God. See what the blue player's got. Be funny if he had a board wipe now. Our Chaomancer can go after the Factor Fiction. This is just going to be another blocker for us though. Alright, so I don't think... Do we need the treasure token? I'm thinking of Nature's Claim to just gain a bit of life just in case it's relevant. If we only swing in with 1 creature, this is 5 mana, so we can do that there, and then we'll have 3, 6, 7 and 8 mana for a Roar of Challenge and an Equip. Should be fine. Yeah, so we'll leave it. See if we lose some life to our Mana Crypt. We win the flip, luckily. And managed to draw ourselves into a land, so play Command Tower. Lightning Greaves can go on Old Gnawbone. That means we can put the Battle Horns to give trample and make it so that our opponent can't gang up on Anzrag, which means that maximises the number of extra combats we can get with this equipment. And obviously our commander is indestructible now because we've managed to keep Anara in play, assuming that stays in play. So then we can play Roar of Challenge. All creatures able to block a target creature do so, and it will gain indestructible from this anyway because our commander's obviously got a lot of power. So even if they get rid of Anara, it doesn't necessarily matter as long as this lands. Could still get bounced by the blue player, and is doing something. That is an Overcharged Amalgam. Counter a target spell or activated ability or triggered ability. So I imagine that's going to do it. So we may well have to go for the Wheel of Fortune this turn. Exploiting the Archaeomancer, playing that out makes more sense now. Obviously they got the Fact or Fiction into hand, but need a creature to exploit to this, although this can exploit itself, but it's a decent body. So that will trigger the Blood Artist again. May have to rely on the Nature's Claim after all. So we could just go for 6 mana with the Embercleave, so that we can play Wheel of Fortune this turn, and try and get a lore effect off that. Yeah, we've got exactly enough for that, so good job I didn't use the treasure token previously. We'll play Embercleave for the full 6 mana, and it does equip itself upon entry. Usually you'd want to swing in with a few creatures and get the cost down on that, surprise your opponent with it. But this is +1/+1 trample and double strike, and it will go onto our commander. So because we're going to try and win this turn, or make it so that our opponents can't get us next turn at least, not going to be able to go for the Nature's Claim of course, but that allowed us to go Wheel of Fortune this turn, so yeah, I suppose we're just hoping for extra combats that we can play off the mana from the Old Gnawbone. Could maybe have made the mana first, and then we would have been able to afford Nature's Claim if we wanted to go for that, just for the sake of gaining more life. Maybe that would have been an idea. We're obviously giving our opponent more cards now as well. Okay, so there's Dockside Extortionist, which only gets us 3 treasures at the moment. Heroic Intervention to protect our board, but that's about it. We've got the Unnatural Growth during our opponent's turns. Yeah, so Dockside as a chump blocker maybe, but we are just swinging in with a bunch of stuff here. We could hold back the Old Gnawbone, I suppose, making it more difficult for our opponents to swing in. So at the moment we're dealing 18 points of commander damage if they don't block. And that obviously means we get a bunch of treasure tokens as well. Yeah, not the best hand we drew into, unfortunately. But we'll have to hold back some blockers. And if they do block, it's obviously alright for us. So deciding not to block for obvious reasons. So Old Gnawbone triggers on the first strike. And again on the second strike. So getting him down to 11, we stick at 10. And let's get another body into play in the form of Dockside Extortionist. Be interesting to see if that 4 life we didn't gain becomes relevant. Don't suppose there was any need to go after that Wheel of Fortune before we attack. That can come in with a plus counter, make it a bit better of a blocker. Make a few more treasures, it does pay for itself here. Unless they want to crack that blood token. And we'll go Sky Shroud Claim, trade out some treasures for a couple of lands. Also what we did was give our opponents a bunch of cards in hand to allow them to decide, or at least allow the black player to decide how he wanted to block or not block. But with Trample and Double Strike we were forcing him to not block either way, so can't feel too bad about it. Let's get down the Unnatural Growth. I'll use treasure mana to do this, so that just in case all the treasures go down we can still hold up the Heroic Intervention. And then do we want Double Strike on something? We can equip this for 3 mana. Probably finally run out of cards, so putting Double Strike on Old Gnawbone's probably going to be a good idea. And we'll equip up the Lightning Greaves onto there as well to help protect it. It's going to be one of our better blockers. Hold up Heroic Intervention and our lands, and that is that. See if we can get pinged out by a Blood Artist. I suppose a board wipe would do it here, wouldn't it? Although we do have Indestructible for that. There's a Shambling Ghast, can make -1/-1 or a treasure upon death, and giving itself Menace and +1/+1, and a Zulaport Cutthroat as well. So it seems as though the Wheel of Fortune has benefited our opponents over us. We didn't get into too good a hand there, unfortunately. So bad luck with the Wheel of Fortune, along with this being cast, has probably cost us the game. Burglar Rat now as well. Each opponent discards a card is fine. This thing has been given Menace now as well. That is a 5/4 with Menace. Discard a fetch. Then sacrificing the blood token to draw a card. And at the beginning of our turn, Unnatural Growth, or at the beginning of every combat I should say, Unnatural Growth going to buff all our power and toughness. So the plus counter actually being relevant here. That is now a 4/6. And coming in at us with 2 Menace creatures, so one of these will get through. Probably best to go after the Defiler of Flesh. So we'll block with our 2 biggest creatures on there so that we don't lose the dockside. And that means that we'll have to take 5 damage. And we've still got a flyer to block this thing, so hopefully we'll be able to survive a Mana Crypt flip. 1 creature's gonna die, which means we get pinged for 2, which means we'll be down by 7 this turn, so we could lose to the Mana Crypt next turn. So not gaining that life from this could be relevant. So down to 3 we go, and we're just teetering with this thing at this point. Braids, I suppose we can sacrifice Dockside, assuming that they, whatever permanent they sacrifice, will be able to sack as well, I suppose. They do go after the Shambling Ghast, so we'll sacrifice Dockside. Okay, and this creature went down as well. So yeah, we go down to the Zulaport and Blood Artists anyway. And it's a credit to our opponents for sticking it out. We were looking pretty commanding there, but they stuck the game out and managed to take care of us here. It was a good shout by the blue player, countering the lure effect here. Unfortunately, didn't get to see more of these types of effects. We obviously want to be forcing our opponents to block so that we can get more combats, especially when they can only block with 1 creature. That means they block with 1 creature, it dies, we untap, attack in again, block with 1 creature, it dies, and rinse and repeat. Add something like Double Strike and Trample, and you can certainly take your opponents out pretty quickly. But yeah, our opponents managed to gang up on us and get us there, as they should have done. So we'll see who wins between these two now. One down to 8, another down to 17. Haven't seen the Stitcher Geralf do too much yet, unfortunately. So the black player may well be able to just go wide on him next turn. That is a Cleaver Scab. Sacrifice another zombie, make 2 token copies of it. Bit too slow, unfortunately. Does have decent toughness though, so assuming it doesn't have Menace, should be able to block any of these 3 power creatures and stay in it. Songs of the Damned, 5 creature cards in the graveyard, add black for each one of them. The Blood Fountain, did it too quickly there and I can't pause the game now like I would normally be able to. The Blood Fountain returns Sir Conrad the Grim and Defiler of Flesh. Yeah, so they've gone for Defiler of Flesh. We'll see the Sir Conrad here, I imagine, so more Aristocrat effects. So yep, there we go, Sir Conrad the Grim. And that triggers the Defiler of Flesh, giving this Menace, meaning it can swing in. Even if it didn't have Menace, it will be able to survive now, thanks to the buff. So should probably turn everything in sideways, I imagine, even if it means losing Zulaport and or Blood Artist. I mean, swinging in with Blood Artist doesn't make sense, but yeah, I would be swinging in with the 2 1/1s as well here. And you might as well swing in with Braids, because you're not going to lose it. Okay, so there's a reality shift on the Grim Harry specs, so that removes that from combat, turns it into a 2/2. And now they can just chump this, but probably better to just take the damage at this point. I mean, they're between a rock and a hard place. You can sacrifice something with Braids, this goes down and triggers the Aristocrats as well. So they take the damage to that. So Braids sacks the Burglar Rat, as you would expect, and that triggers all 3 of the Aristocrat effects in Sir Conrad, Blood Artist and the Zulaport Cutthroat. They did decide to sacrifice the creature that they had, so that's even more Aristocrat effects on the stack. Like I said, they're between a rock and a hard place at this point. In comes a Thran Dynamo. Seems as though the blue player's just trying to stem the bleeding. Yeah, an Illusionist Bracers, 2 cards left in hand. Was just constantly setting up throughout the entire game really, didn't get to do a whole lot of anything unfortunately. But has played it out valiantly nonetheless and did make a difference to the game. That's why, even if you don't do well during a game, you can make a difference to the outcome, so yet another reason not to scoop early. So just turning everything in sideways. May well have an Ether Eyes or something, so he could save himself. An Ether Spouts, excellent. That is one way out of it. I do always play around Ether Spouts and Ether Eyes because, I mean, there's no real reason to turn everything in sideways there, and I don't think I've ever been caught with it, but it's well worth playing around. All our opponent had to do there was turn in sideways with a 2 power creature, couple of 1-power creatures. But yeah, didn't play around this and paying the price for it here. That's one way to dodge the aristocrats. So 5 cards in hand, all that stuff on top of his library now. A prized statue, and this player does have artifacts to sacrifice to Braids. So it may well be just get down the Braids and try and get him to lose life to it at this point. Braids and a creature would do it here, I'm not sure how much this costs though. Okay, just decides to pass with 8 mana held up. So down comes the Stitcher again. And that Training Grounds is still active from the beginning of the game. The Bracers goes on there as well. 1 card in hand, 4 mana held up. Now he does know what he's drawing into here, so he could have put a small creature on top. Ready to go Braids into the small creature. Encourage him to sack the commander in this case. Okay, so Sir Conrad the Grim into play. Obviously just drew into that. And then there's Braids. 3 mana, 3 cards in hand. The statue being sacrificed, going to make a treasure, and our opponent will have to get rid of the Thran Dynamo, and he does. Be amazed if the blue player can crawl out from under this. Now it's noteworthy that the ability on Stitcher Geralf does have cards leave. How is this worded? I always forget, Sir Conrad. A creature leaves your graveyard, so they'll have to be careful only targeting their own stuff. Activating the Stitcher Geralf, because if they exile stuff from the graveyard it will count as leaving, and that will trigger the Sir Conrad. And of course it counts on the milling as well, doesn't it? So yeah, Sir Conrad was the perfect card against our opponent, and try and have a quick look at the cards that were milled here. Of course we know there's a bunch of creatures on top thanks to that Ether Eyes. Yeah, I forgot about the milling of the Sir Conrad. So yeah, that's the perfect antidote against the blue self-mill deck. So yeah, it would have been interesting to see if he could have got out from underneath that, because he was only just starting to get going there, unfortunately, but made a difference to the game nonetheless, like I said. Hopefully you all enjoyed that visit to the Mole God, and if you want to see more from it, then you'll have to let me know as usual. Big thank you to the patrons for their monetary support of the channel, and I will see you all in the next one. I'm Tribalkai. Thank you for watching.